Hey everybody, welcome to SwJ. Today we're going to be talking about how forests are winning worldwide, how forests are making a comeback, and we're going to be continuing on with our blanket project, my t-shirts on 20-year-old denim blanket project that I've been so excited about working on again. And have the usual cushion needle, red thread, and we'll be using our blanket stitch because we're making a blanket. I usually use the blanket stitch, but now especially that we're using it on a blanket, it feels very, very appropriate, even though I do use it for pretty much everything. Anyways, forests winning worldwide. So a couple of general stats that are really exciting to me before we get into more specific details is that many countries now have more acres of forest than they did any time in the last century. So since the early 1900s and 20s, the forests are coming back. There was so much deforestation, so many products just consuming paper en masse, and now the world has shifted, and there's been a lot of reforestation projects, and in fact reforestation rates are catching up to deforestation rates, and that's massive news, because if we can plant as many or more trees than we are using, then we can eventually catch up. And they are super important. The amount of carbon that they pull and store is huge. And if we can have forests grow and consume all that carbon, pull it out of the atmosphere, maybe keep the temperature rise, keep the oceans from rising the 2 degrees that they're predicting that they're going to by 2050. Forests can go a long ways in helping that. Also, even just like local vegetation on your property, having a hedge is a big way to clean up the air directly around you. The fewer pollutants that you have in you, the longer you live, the better quality of life you have. It's it's proven. It's science. Cheers. Now some big victories for specific forests. Let's get into some specifics. In Oregon, the Elliott State Forest is host to a lot of coho salmon. No, they're not forest salmon. There is a river that runs through it. However, the trees keep that river cool, and it needs to be cool for proper spawning to take place. So many coho salmon live in this area, and there's been a dedication of 82,000 acres or 33,000 hectares to be protected from logging in the Elliott State Forest. So that's massive news for the coho salmon there. Another big win in the States is around Elgin Air Force Base, and they have protected 11,000 square miles, which is 3 million hectares. And conversions get crazy when you go from square miles to hectares. So 11,000 square miles, or 3 million hectares around Elgin Air Force Base are protected. So some very beautiful old growth forests now protected. This is a big one that I found really cool, is in Australia. They have protected 1,500 square miles or 400,000 hectares in Western Australia. And Western Australian forests apparently have some quite a number of species of trees which are only found there. They are nowhere else in the world. And some of the woods, the names are kind of fun. One is Tinglewood. There's Jara, Kari, Mari, Tuart, and Wandu. All those different types of trees that I had never heard of before are only in that area of Australia, and now they are protected. So, huzzah. Very exciting news. Now, traveling over to South America, there's a foundation there that's doing amazing things to protect natural areas, and that is the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation. The Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation, working out of South America. And they have donated an additional $300 million to biodiversity and forest conservation in the Andes and the Amazon. Now, I don't know exactly how much they've given already, but if it's an additional $300 million, I can only imagine. And so far, their organization, their foundation, has already saved 1.5 million square miles, translating into 400 million hectares. That's a staggering, mind-boggling number. And with an additional $300 million in South America, it should be able to go a long ways to protecting a lot more rainforest and biodiversity, different types of animals. And this is what we need the super rich to do, I think, is set up foundations like this, and countries can only do so much. Countries are in debt. Most countries are in debt. I don't know if there are countries that aren't in debt, which is, to me, is weird. But countries can only do so much. It's going to be on private citizens and the super rich to do a lot of the things that countries just can't. The countries take so long to make decisions on anything. You propose something, and 5 years later they're still discussing it, when it needs to be implemented 6 years ago, and could be easily implemented. It's just tied up in red tape, and that's where we need citizens to come in. People like, I know everybody talks about him, but Elon Musk, coming in and basically privatizing the space industry, coming in when other supply chains are being cut off, and now he can supply NASA with rockets, and that's where the private citizens need to come in. The super rich need to basically make up for the weaknesses in government and bypass all these things. like all these cancer drugs that are in trial stage and everything like this, get people to sign waivers and get those drugs out there. If they're gonna die anyways, just give them a chance. These cancer beads that I talked about in a previous episode, curing cancer in 6 days. It's unreal. But it's stuck in the clinical testing stages, and it makes sense. You have to test this stuff before it just goes out to the public, or else you could unleash the zombie apocalypse. It's just something needs to speed up the process sometimes. And when private citizens can come in, or something like the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation, can come in and donate hundreds of millions of dollars to preserving lands that governments would otherwise need to be harvesting to make that same money. That's what needs to happen. There's a lot of people out there making a lot of money off of everybody else. And a lot of industries are destroying the planet, and those industries and the people making money off of those industries need to start making that stuff right. Industries that are pumping microplastics directly into the water stream should be helping to pay for the vessels that are out in the ocean, cleaning up all of the plastic in the ocean. That's the thing, people just make their money and get out. And the environment suffers along the way, but people have to eat. What would you do if you put a bunch of money into a company and your family's survival depended on you making this product, but partway through you realize that it's putting a lot of plastic waste into the environment, and to do otherwise would bankrupt your company? What do you do? And a lot of people will hop up on their podium and say, "Oh, I'd quit, I'd stop, I'd do everything a better way, I'd find investors, I'd do whatever." It just doesn't always happen that way. You can think of ideal worlds and everything, but the people that do make it need to make up for the ones that don't. Unfortunately, that seems to be the way it is anyways. I'm gonna get off my soapbox, and we will call that an episode. Got a good chunk done there, talked about some winning forests, and yeah, thanks a lot for joining me. I do really value the time we get to spend together. Till next time, keep chilling. Don't forget your cookie. Peace.